Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is your favorite warlock, practicing necromancer, and today I'm bringing to you a topic that seems to be a rising discussion amongst newcomers into the occult. Now, most people, when they come into the occult, they always want to go either to the white light practitioners to fit in, or they go to the darker side of things like Satanism, necromancy, and black magic. But when we talk about knowledge, wisdom, okay, the white light practitioners don't always do their homework. They never, how should I say this, delve into things more than what they have to. Most of the time, it's by how should I say this? By word of mouth, so to speak. What they've heard, what they've been told, what they've been led to believe. We see this a lot with the Judo-Christian institutions, the JCI, for an example, because they've been led into servitude, basically. The entrapment of here's the only way, but you can't do it on your own, which literally puts you at the mercy of the department head of a particular church, coven, or diocese, if you will. These individuals don't want you to learn, they don't want you to grow, they want you to be obedient. So, when we get into discussions of Satan, for an example, we see where the name Satan goes all the way back to the Munich manuscripts, and he's viewed as the watcher, the chief watcher. Okay, whereas in angelology, he is not just a watcher, but he's like the top guy. He's one of the first classifications of angels, and this can even go as far back as the constitution of Pope Honorius. Even that of, say, for an example, the clavicle of Solomon. Okay, the Grand Grimoire, the Grand Grimoire Red Dragon, even. But we also notice that angels have appeared in things in a lot of texts that people don't talk about. They don't even teach this stuff in occultism anymore. Most people don't even know where the roots of certain words come from. Okay, so when we're talking fallen angels, look at Asmodeus for an example. Asmodai, depending on the spelling of this particular fallen angel, you see him in the a number of grimoires. Okay, from Edward Arthur White, the ceremonial book of magic, or the book of black magic by Edward Arthur White. You see him in the Goetia, you know, the say for an example, let's say the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. Okay, and he's always surrounded by two applications: desire and wrath. Okay, but if you go into the Middle East and you get into the stories and the mythos of the jinn, then you see him as a genie, a man who became a practitioner, who evolved into a sainthood, if you will, before being demonized. And we see this within today's population. We're seeing the exact same thing. So The fallen angels, the destroyer, the destroyer is known as Satan, okay? But if you actually looked at Satan for an example, the Hebrew name is Ha-Satan, meaning adversary, okay? In Judaism and Islamic text, he's known as El Shaitan, the accuser, okay? So, where do these terms come from? And when you get into the Nephilim, these giants, the children of angels and human women, there's most of the time people go to the Bible, the JCI Bible, Book of Genesis, chapter 4. Okay, this is verses 1 through 6. Okay, depending on the translation, that you have, or the type of Bible that you have, because there's, well, as many Bibles out there today as there are trees, branches on trees. So let's take a look at this for a moment. You Mage Darkwater, welcome. Lin, yeah, that's one of the names. And what's interesting here is in verses 1 through 6, it gives you a brief description of this, a little bit of the story. And it says that these watcher angels looked down and saw mankind beginning to multiply upon the earth, and they developed the lusts for the women, okay, the daughters of men. And so they ended up taking these women as their wives when they started associating with mankind. This story goes even further by saying that they went into them and they bore children, the Nephilim, and these became known as the wise in children, the Nephilim. Okay, and what's interesting here is that's where they left it, because after this it went into the death of the world, the great flood, the great catastrophe. Okay, didn't really go into anything more than just that. When I first started getting into the Nephilim, I went to a brother, S. Ben Cayenne, because I knew that he specialized in the knowledge of this through his book, the Smokeless Fire, Volume 1. The Grigori is perhaps one of the greatest stories out there that you can find, because that was the first order of angels. They were warrior class. They were the type that obeyed to the letter. I mean, if you want to think of the perfect soldiers, that's what they were. They were focused, they were disciplined, and they just completed the tasks, whatever needed to be done. And they were above the archangels. And a lot of people, even in biblical scholars, they don't separate Satan from Lucifer. Lucifer was actually an archangel. He was known as a philosopher. Okay. And when you look at this, they're clearly two different things, two different beings, two different personalities. They're not one and the same as you're led to believe. So you could actually read up on Lucifer in the Bible, if you will, if you want to. It's in Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 through 15. Okay. And you will get a full description of why he fell from the heavens right there. But you also want to go into demonolatry as well, not just angelology. Okay, for an example, the day star in ancient Greek, known as Phosphoros. Okay, Phosphoros was the day star, whereas Hespios was the dark star. Don't get them mixed up. Okay, the Roman version of Lucifer, the sun god, you really don't need an introduction to him. Ra, within Egyptian. Okay, Inti and Inca, for an example. The mythos is worldwide. You just got to look for the commonalities. But here it is. There's really not much out there on these type of things that people teach. So the best sources on this type of thing can be traced to roughly about 5 or 6 books. Okay. The Ars Notorias. Okay. This is broken down into the Ars Goetia, the Ars Theur, see if I can pronounce this right, because I'm translating it from Latin. Thurgia, if you will, if it's English word, Goetia. The Ars, what's that, Panalar, Panalari, I think it is. And it's interesting because the next one is the Ars Almadel, Solomonus, and then you got the Ars Notoria. And it's very interesting how all of this is made up from the clavicle of Solomon. You got the greater and the lesser keys. And what you see on various different occult books out there that have been written and regurgitated, everything's becoming more and more watered down. Studio Nor, welcome. So when we get into this, you want to go back in history because this is just one topic, one source of information. So, I mean, if you, for an example, you look at the Kolbrin Bible, for an example, the Kolbrin Bible, this particular Bible goes into a huge amount of information just on the prophesying or the views of a destroyer, the children that caused this, and most importantly, it talks about the fallen. Okay, and what's interesting here is the very description is more not as a spiritual being, but of, one might say, a visitor to this world. Okay, it could be anything from, say, an asteroid slamming into the earth. Okay, if you think about the giants that walked the earth, we know about dinosaurs. These things were huge beings, okay, standing 30, 40 feet tall, you know, if not more, you know. So it's kind of funny how one meteor slamming into the earth caused global catastrophe, changed the power, if you will, from the dinosaurs to the more primitive mankind, created the seeds of life for mankind. So when we get into the book of Genesis, chapter 1, it clearly comes out and says, hey, in the beginning, the earth was void and without form, okay, which speaks to a war that took place beforehand, okay? Darkness was on the face of the deep. Wow, okay? Okay, so what caused that destruction? What caused the earth to be formed? What do we know about the fallen? What do we know about these other species of angels, demons, even the jinn? Well, let's look at this for just a minute, shall we? Today we go by the Egyptian perspective. We know the Shem priests were responsible for the book of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which is a grimoire. We know that Thoth is seen as the magician, the lord or god of magic. Okay, much like Aradia in Greek. Okay, it's very interesting to see how gods and goddesses are known for teaching mankind magic, writing, alchemy. Azazel is known as the teacher of alchemy. He taught men how to forge metals, weaponry, taught women taught women how to paint their faces, makeup, the art of seduction. The green emerald, for an example, prime example right there. It's supposed to be this big magical green jade of a text. The book of Thoth was supposedly written on tablets made of gold. Okay, and it was said in some of these prophecies that out of all of them that were sunk to the bottom of the ocean, that only three came back. And this is what the world is based on today when it comes to the viewpoints of the end of days. Right there. The Bible and Christians and the JCI will tell you, oh, Satan's going to lose. Really? It comes down to how you define Satan. Satan being the accuser, the adversary, or the Gregori, the chief watcher. Because if you actually question them and say, hey, where in the Bible does it say that he's the enemy of God? They're going to shun you and gang up on you. Why? Because nowhere in the book, the entire Bible, does it say that he's the enemy of God. Because if you get into the book of Job, for an example, it was Satan that strolled into his kingdom and said, hey, your people are not living right for you. Now, Christians forget that it was Yahweh, Jehovah, you know, God, that sent Satan after Job. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that Satan is a murderer. In fact, Second Corinthians chapter 4, verse 4 says that Satan is the God of this world. The God, little g. Okay? They don't get this. Okay, so if you're going by the biblical aspects of good versus evil, light versus dark, enlightenment versus slavehood, you're only getting a very little bit, a tidbit of information that is scattered throughout the Bible. Okay? He's known as the great deceiver. Okay? Even Anton Zandalevay said the greatest trick the devil ever did was convince the world he was not there. He didn't exist. Well, let's look at it from a Christian perspective for just a second. He's the great serpent, the old serpent. Well, if we go back to chapter 3, the fall of man from the Garden of Eden in the book of Genesis, the serpent told Eve that you will not die, but you will surely live, but you will be enlightened. Now, what is the tree of life and the tree of death? Go into Hermeneutics. Go into the Hermeneutics, the Kabbalah. Okay, and you will see where the tree of life was about enlightenment. It was about knowledge. It was about wisdom. The tree of death is about putting to death fears, doubts, the things that would make you jealous. One of the things that I've come to understand in my career is pain comes in all forms, shapes. Pain from spiritual, physical, emotional. Okay? It comes in a wide range of things that engulfs a lot of things throughout your day to day life. It's not just the spiritual pains, or the birthing pains, or the breaking of a bone, but it is things that helps you to grow and to evolve. The tree of life and the tree of death within Kabbalah and Hermeneutics is that very gnosis, the very gnosis right there. If you go into the Kabbalah, or and from there, and then you go into, say, for an example, let's go into Islamic traditions, the Quran. The Quran was originally a book of enlightenment, a book of tolerance. That some fanatics have taken and made it into an act of terrorism. Now it's a form of religion, just like the Bible. Okay? But people forget that even in these books, they were based off magic, they were based off sorcery that was taught to them through ceremonial and ritualized acts of, of magic, be it remote viewing, astral projection, or even perform spiritual communions, invocations, evocations, calling on the spirits to help guide them, to enlighten them. Judaism, for an example, works with all kinds of spiritual entities, such as the golem. What is a golem but a manufactured being through a magical word, either written on the brow or on a scroll that is shoved in the mouth? In necromancy, it would be a hieroglyph, a talisman that was broken in half. The practitioner would hold onto one and the other would be shoved down the throat of the corpse. Look at the zombie mythos, for an example, from Haitian Voodoo, a spiritual act. Exactly, Mage Darkwater. Sitcha Ara, the Da'ath practice, the tree of Da'ath, the tree of death, Hermeneutics. Okay? So, what's interesting here is that when you go into the book of Thoth, for an example, the book of Thoth teaches you alchemy. It teaches you about herbalism. It teaches you about prophesying and divination. Okay? Teaches you about magical spells. Okay? Through prayers, through incantations. Whereas in the book of Enoch, the three books of Enoch, it gives a much broader scope of these angels who came to have to earth, took wives unto themselves, and produced Nephilim, the children of angels and humans. Okay, half breeds, if you will. Now, what's interesting here is that by the time you get into the book of Giants, the book of Giants is one of those texts that has been really watered down. I have to say, really watered down because it's incomplete. You're not getting the full book because the original text was so big that it may or may not have even existed. Okay, there's a lot of mythos around it. Some say if it existed, then it's most likely been taken into the astral realms. Others say that if it existed, it was destroyed through the Great Wars. The Great Flood washed it away. Whatever. But when you get into S. Ben Cayenne's book, The Smokeless Fire, he literally gives you sources and views if you know what to read. I mean, hell, even if you get into the Necromaicon by Simon, right underneath the prelude, it talks about the Mad Arab's journey, when he began his journey, when it ended, and it talks about the great disasters, January 15th to the 19th to February. 15th to the 19th. That's a month-long journey. But during that, he witnessed political upheaval. He witnessed great floods, disasters, extreme forces of weather, be it drought, rain, you know, famine, you name it. He witnessed it through his journey. And he got the reputation of being a mad Arab. But it also tells you exactly where his village was in the Middle East. You see what I mean? You have to actually delve into the mythos and you have to delve into history and combine them, not just with archaeology, folklore, mythology, history, archaeology. Get into anthropology and you'll see this. I mean, world history, 101 is something that is spectacular. So when you gain that level of enlightenment and you begin to understand where the philosophy of a certain religion comes from, then you can make your enemy fear you. There's an old expression which states, pretend to be a sucker to catch a sucker. Okay? Basically, I would recommend uh, the first book of Enoch, chapter 1 through 18. If you can get your hands on a portion of that that actually gives you that detail, you'll understand the fallen angels and why there was a fall and why they're referred to the fallen. Most importantly, you'll understand what they taught, who their leader was. Um, the leader of the rebellion basically made a deal with a much older um, demon known as Shimyaza. Now, Shimyaza actually worked for Dahaka, okay, and who was actually a demon at the time. And I don't even know, to be fair, I haven't found much information on Dahaka. And the E.A. Koetting was the only other person that I know that actually talked about Dahaka. So, and that was out of the book of Azazel. Okay, so and that was underneath the demon aspects of that. So, yeah, that one, a diva. Like I said, I haven't found much information on this particular entity. I know Hollywood produced films have talked about it, like Xena the Warrior Princess did an episode of it. There has been a couple mentions throughout history of the spirit, but no one really knows exactly who the spirit is outside of the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants. So, you, if you really want to get into the three books of Enoch, I would recommend Book One to you. The reason for that is because it clearly goes down into why they left their post, where they made the deal, which started the rebellion, and went down to Earth, created Nephilim, and why they did it. These, and then when they were locked away, chapter 18 actually gives you the exact location. And it will surprise the hell out of you where they went, because if you actually look at today's political leaders, not just the spiritual, you'll notice the direction that they go every freaking time. They always go from, say, for example, the US over into Rome, down into Egypt, and down into Africa, and then down into the South Pole. That direction every freaking time. It's ironic. It's uncanny. The Druge. Not really. I'm not really big on Hinduism that much. I am aware of the entities that the Diva, the Devi. I am aware of all the spirits and everything that are in there, but I'm not really familiar with him because I don't really work with him. I have touched base with Callie once or twice, but it's really not an area of my expertise. Now, if you want to get into the Devi, I would recommend getting in touch with a brother of mine who is an author and a publisher, and Edgar Caval is his name. He'd be able to give you all kinds of sources. Zoroastrianism is a religion that came before Christianity. It was actually a very good one based off Stoicism, not just spiritualism. And if you want to think of Zoroastrianism, the best way to describe it would be think a form of Bushido mixed in with Shintoism. Best way I can describe that, because if when you put them together, that is basically the religious formation today, where it is Christianity and the JCI is literally that of, how should I say this, more about money and profit these days. It's more of a business. It's just remain in power. It's about control. But it's also a very spiritual for those who they are actually spiritual. Zoroastrianism deals with Ahura Mazda, the mad god, but also that of Orion. Now, the thing I found interesting about Zoroastrianism was how similar that the practices and the spirits are to that of the Necromyicon by Simon. Donald Tyson, on the other hand, I don't know what he was thinking, but he took that to the extreme. Just my perspective on that one. Simon's books were actually based off the original Necromyicon. He actually brought it into a few books that really break it down from the dead names to the gates, goes into history from astrology to the zodiacs to various different things. Really loved his work. It's actually where I started getting into the political stuff and not just the spiritual, the journey within archaeology. I recommend it, by the way. And you can find those books by Simon, ones I recommend. So, the books that I would recommend to you if you really want to delve into the fallen, the destroyer, especially from a prophesying manner, is the Ars Notoria, the Kolbrin Bible, the three books of Enoch, the Book of Giants, and the Book of Thoth. The Smokeless Fire by S. Ben Cayenne is a very good one. Um, I would also recommend the Book of Prophecy by Herbert Locklear if you can get your hands on it. I didn't write that down in the box below. I actually have the more updated version of them, but and I'm still missing some of them. They're not. Some people consider not to be a part of that original series. It was a 27 book series from the 1980s, and there it breaks the Bible down into various different segments, from the Book of Kings to the Book of Men, the Book of Women, the Book of Prophecy, the Book of well, let's just say they got a book for just about everything in the Bible. Now, the Book of Prophecy, and now that one was very, very interesting because when you get into that one, it's more of a biblical prophecy that is based off the Book of Revelation, but it is, you want to mix that one with the Book of Proverbs. Okay. putting those two together is one of the best ones that I've ever come across. Because when you break it down and you start understanding the seven bowls, for an example, the seven bowls, the seven trumpets, the seven what do they call that? The was it the bowls, the trumpets, oh, and the seals. Okay, then you can actually break this stuff down, and you can actually see where it takes over a total year of 21 years, and it literally comes down into a lot of different things, and you can actually break that down from a prophesying perspective. And this actually goes along with the books that I just mentioned here. Okay, so that's something for you to actually look into as well. It's by Herbert Locklear. Okay, you can probably get all these off Amazon, eBay, um, maybe a books, even what is it, Scribd. You'll most likely find them all on Scribd. You can you pay, like, I think it was, last time I looked, it was like $8 a month. It probably went up by now because it has been about 5 years, just like everything else. But Ferris Stiller, welcome, brother, my friend. And yes, the Smokeless Fire. I recommend part one and part two. I also recommend Espen's complete writing to you. I have like three or four books by him, by Espen Cayenne, and I love them. I really do. I love his works, love his books. Recommend him as an author and a practitioner to anyone. Don't hate him because he was associated with Goetic. Don't hate him for that. Trust me, this man is intelligent. He actually knows what he's talking about. And when he writes his books, he literally cuts away the bullshit and gets right to the facts. So I recommend him. So Metaverse was paying attention to you. Yeah, I noticed about that. There's an old expression: don't ignore the. Let me. I have my grimoire right here, Pharaoh. I want to read something to you while I have you right here. Let's see, which one was it? So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life. Very much true, because everything is made off of reputation these days, and everybody's attacking everybody. Win through your actions, never against or through arguments. Okay? When you get into arguments and you start to argue with people, you lose sight of the objectives. You lose sight of just about everything. Okay? And it becomes about egotistical posturing, which is basically useless. It becomes about pride at that point. So it's best to ignore the arguments and stay away from it. Okay? And one of the other things is that I recommend is where is it? Play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. Love that one. To disarm and infuriate with mirror effect. Why do you think my enemies hate me so much? I don't engage with them. So when the enemy attacks, I use logic. I will give them the facts, but I am not going to do the work for them. They want to be lazy, don't want to do the work, then guess what? That's on them. because it speaks to their actions, not mine. You welcome, Pharaoh. So, but I do recommend all of these books that I mentioned. I would also recommend The Art of War as well, because by Sun Tzu, because you can actually anticipate things, especially with what you do as practitioners. So, with that said, I want to thank Mage Darkwater, Studio Nor. Let me see. Hey, Alkalone. I missed that one. I apologize, my friend. And Felicifer. Draco Starseed. Welcome. Basically, studio. Basically, that's exactly. There's actually I actually have it written down here that. Or is it? When asking for help, appeal to people's self interest and never to their mercy or gratitude. Use absence to increase respect and honor. Personally, that one there I highly recommend because if you are absent, you see where people go, where their thoughts and their logic. If you remain silent, you learn more about your opponents. You learn more about what they're about because they run their mouth. Great example of this was Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, Rush Hour 1. Just putting that out there. When you assume, that's your greatest downfall. That's why it's better to be humble. You're not a know it all. You may learn and grow with knowledge and wisdom over the years. It takes a lifetime to master, sometimes more than one lifetime. But when you're studying, you're always the pupil. Doesn't matter if you are an apprentice of a master, because that's all that is a master. It's a title. It's a title of importance. Churches use titles, demand respect, because they hold a title of pastor, priest, bishop, archbishop. I'm an archbishop within occultism, within Satanism. Does it mean that I'm better? No. But I will tell you this. Everything I've learned to this point in my life is through hardship, through trial and error, dedicated and committed practice. Everything that I'm sharing with you, I've personally practiced. But is it the only way? No. There is countless ways to go about doing this stuff. But when we're getting into the fallen angels, we're getting into the Nephilims, and we're getting into what is classified as the destroyer, well, guess what? There are numerous sources that predate Christianity. They will give you a much broader sense of understanding and enlightenment. For an example, let's look at the punishment of the serpent, Book of Genesis. After giving Eve the apple and she sharing it with Adam, Adam chose to turn against his wife, blame her. Their punishment was being shunned from the garden. But here's the kicker. Let's look at the very definition of the serpent. The very definition. The punishment of the serpent was to slither on its belly. Why is that a punishment when that's exactly what it does? Logic. Would this be classified as a atheistic perspective? Most likely. Maybe a scientific one at that. So therefore, how should I say, agnostic, a Gnostic view. Okay, but taking the symbolism of the serpent represents cunningness, craftiness, wisdom, and enlightenment. You look at how snakes present themselves in the wild. Some have rattles, some blow themselves up, some mimic more deadlier ones. Some use their tails to represent their heads. Cunningness, craftiness. The bushmasters blend in with their environments. Hmm. The mumbas, the green mamba, for an example, blends in with the trees. One of the most toxic, venomous snakes out there. Hmm. But when it comes down to it, most snakes would rather you leave them alone and they'll leave you alone. Hmm. So, why is Satan a representation of the serpent? In fact, why is he represented as a dragon, the old serpent of mine? The dragon represents Leviathan, Shirazon, Corzon, Dagon, Tiamat. Hmm. It's like when they talk about the hells. When they talk about hell, are we talking Jahannam, Sheol? How about the hells in Buddhism? Hmm. What about Apollyon or Abaddon, for that matter? It's known as a place and an angel. So which variation are they referring to? You see, this is things they don't teach anymore. It's like with these three categories underneath the title. They don't teach this stuff anymore. So the best way for you to outsmart them, do the work for yourself. It's why I live my life by two codes of creeds. Two creeds. Whatever you preach, always back it up with numerous facts. And always make yourself available to the public. Because you answer to the public, just like you answer to those that you serve as an ambassador, a witch, a warlock, a necromancer, a shaman. You answer to the spirits that you work with. You represent them. And if you lead somebody down the wrong path, well, then you are accountable. It's not about flair, it's not about popularity. It's about knowledge, wisdom, education. That's why I do what I do. I'm not, I don't give two shits what other people do. What you do, you're responsible for. Exactly, Studio Noir. So, with that said, I'm going to wrap this up. Have a good day. Good night. I got to go do some chores and get ready to go pick up my son in a few hours. So, second day of kindergarten. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. You're welcome, studio. Have a good day.